Hi, welcome back to Mr. Stewart's Lessons. Sorry I've been away for a while, but I've been working on some exciting stuff for you. I'm going to show you how to make a new level, which you may or may not already know, but I'm going to show you a lot of more interesting stuff, including we're going to work up toward making a great level editor, improved level editor. You might be thinking, well, Greenfoot already has a level editor. Why do I need that? I can just click things and drop them, right? I can click the wall and just click here and drop it. And so what do I need a level editor for? But it's not very good, and I'm going to show you why in just a sec. But first, what you should do is go to Mr. Stewart's Lessons and find Greenfoot Lesson 25 and download the demo so you can follow along here as well. The first thing I'll do is show you how to create a new level, which is really pretty easy. You notice I have a level right here. I'm going to go to World, and I'm going to go to New Subclass, and I'll call it Tile 2 because the first one was already called Tile. I can pick a different background, and I'll call it bluerock.jpg, and I'll click OK. And so here's my new level. And I'll show you in another lesson how to activate the new level from the previous level. But I want to show you something a little different here. So I'm going to click on here, and if I want to edit the new level, right? If I want to get to it, to actually get it, I click here and I do New Tile 2. So if I want to go to this one, I want to go back to Tile, I click with my right mouse button, do New Tile, and then here I do New Tile 2. And this will allow me to edit it just like the other one. So I want to build the level, right? So I think, oh, I'll just start putting down the squares, right? I'll put this one, yeah, right about here. That looks good. Wait a minute, that's not where I put it, right? This should go up here. You've already noticed this annoyingly enough, right? How annoying this is that when you lay everything out. Plus, you know, I mean, I want everything to be, this should be about the width of a box too, but it's probably not. I'm just eyeballing it, right? Now, the other way you could do it is actually to go into the thing here. You know, I can do save the world, right? And I can go in and I can actually start putting in, right, the actual precise coordinates here. But that's also a real nuisance and takes forever if you've got a million things to do, if you've got a million walls to put in, right? What I'd really like to do here is I'd like to make it so that it can just get the location of the walls from something easy that I can make real easily. Like, for example, a text file. How about a text file, right? So say, for example, I laid out this text file, right? So each of these is a wall. This could be the cheese. I think it's a little bit cheese-like. And then the ampersand can be the cat. I think it's shaped a little bit like a cat. I don't know. So that's why I picked ampersand for the cat. And it's very precisely laid out. This whole thing is 600 wide. Each wall is 50 wide, which means there's 12 possible walls across the width of the thing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It's 400 high. The walls are also 50 high. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it's if I could just get it to open, this is a simple text file, map.txt. I'm just editing it in, I'm using plain old Notepad here, which is the program, right? It's just plain old Notepad. But if you have a PC, if you have a Mac, what I would recommend, you don't have a really good simple text editor for the Mac. I don't know why. I think it's totally stupid. The program you want is something called Notepad++. You can download it and do simple plain text files. So I have a plain text file called map, and I'd like to have the program read this plain text file and turn it into a map. But the thing is, we have to read a file. That's a new thing. We haven't done that before. So we're going to have some new stuff here, but kind of exciting new stuff you're going to learn. I made the screen extra wide because there's some extra stuff that's going on here. So let me talk about what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to read a file. So I'm going to have to import some stuff. Java.io.star. I/O is all of the stuff that Java uses to read and write files. We're going to be opening a file. We're going to be reading a file. And then I'm going to use an array variable. I'll explain what that is later, but to use an array variable, I have to import java.util.list. Okay, so now what do I need to do? The first thing I need to do is I'm going to have to create some variables. So some things what I'm going to do, because this is going to be a very long lesson, I'm just going to copy and paste all these variables in here from where I already wrote them somewhere else, so it won't take forever seeing me write them. So I'm just going to paste these in here all together just to speed things up, and I'll explain what each one is. The first two is the width and height of the world, right? Now, so just explain one thing. Private means it's only going to be used for this particular class, which is the world class. Final, I've used this in other places. That means it's done. It's not going to change. That means I'm going to assign this variable and it's not going to change. Int means it's a number, and world width is the name of the variable. You notice it's all in caps. That's because it's a final variable. All final variables should be all in caps. And this just does the get width method on the world. So this world width is going to be 600 because the world is 600 wide. World height is the same thing. It's 400 high. This line here is going to get it's going to create a wall. We're not going to actually use this wall for anything. It's just sort of going to be to sort of, we're going to get out the measuring tape on it. We're going to figure out how big this wall is. So that's all this is going to do. It's going to create a wall just so we can look at it basically and see how big it is. This here is going to get the image of that wall. So this is going to create a Greenfoot image variable, and it's going to called wall template image, and it's going to get the image of the wall template. So these two lines here are going to find the height and width of the wall of a wall. So the wall here is 50 pixels by 50 pixels. And sorry, I opened the wrong one. The wall, so that's 50 pixels by, so the wall here is 50 pixels by 50 pixels. And these two here, what we're going to do, since the world is 600 wide and the walls are 50 wide, that means we're going to count the number of walls wide it is and the number of walls high it is. So this particular one is, so this one is going to come out to, the world is 600 wide, the wall is 50 wide, so the map width is going to be 12. That means it's 12 walls wide. The map height is going to be 8 walls high. That's 400, which is the height of the world, divided by 50, which is the height of the wall. You might be saying, hey Jim, if you know what these numbers are, why are you having the computer figure them out for you? And the answer is, we want to make our program so that it can roll with the punches. If we change how big a wall is or change how big the world is, I don't want to have to go in my code and tinker around with it and change everything. I want the code to just adjust, and that's why we're doing it this way. The next things we're going to do, the name of this map, this little text file that we're creating is map.txt. So this is the name of the file that we're going to be reading to get it from. Wall marker, right now all this program's going to do, this is going to take several lessons to show you how to do this. All this program's going to do right now is draw the walls. So this star, all this star is saying that on this map, everywhere where there's a star, we're going to draw a wall. We're not going to draw the cat and the cheese yet. So the star, this is just saying that a star represents a wall. And last of all, we're going to create an array variable. An array variable is, what that means is, a simple array means that you have a bunch of different values in a variable, each one that gets a number. So for example, a simple array might be this top row, which is this star would be 0, this blank space would be 1, this blank space would be 2, this would be 3, this one would be 4, 5, 6, all the way up to 12, right? But here's the thing, we need a two-dimensional array. So what we need to do is we need to have 8 rows, each of which is 12 wide. So that each one of these has its own number, right? So 2 numbers really. So this one would be 0, 0. This one here would be 1, 0. This one here would be 0, 1. This one here would be 1, 1. It's not x and y. In this case, the y comes first, not the x. That's the way the array gets laid out. But the point is that each of these has 2 numbers. So for example, this one would be 4 down, so that would be 3, and then 3 over, so that would be 2. So this would be 3 comma 2, for example. We're gonna, this string array, we have two pairs of curly brackets. That means it's a two-dimensional array. It's a string because each one of these little symbols is going to be a single string, a single character. A string, of course, can be any number of characters, but these strings are only going to be 1 character. Map array is the name of the variable, and then we're just, because of the sort of redundancy that goes in Java, we're saying it's a new string here. So, okay, so what we're going to do now, I'm going to go down here, and so the first thing I'm going to do is I want to read the map from the text file. So I'm going to make a method here called read map from text file. We actually don't need a prepare method in this case, so I'm going to get rid of this and get rid of the prepare method because that's not how we're doing things here. We're not using a prepare method. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do a method called read map from text file, which is right down here. So what this is going to do is it's going to read the map and it's going to return this. It's going to return what the map array is going to be. Okay? So that means it's going to return a two-dimensional string. So this here is saying what it's going to return, which is a two-dimensional string. And the name of we'll call the method exactly what it does, which is read map from text file. Now, it needs to know some things. It's going to need to know how wide the map's going to be. It's going to need to know how high the map's going to be. It's going to need to know the name of the file it's going to read. Now, you might be saying, wait, why are we passing, if you know a little Java, you might be thinking, these are fields in the class. All these file name, map width, map height, they're already there. Why do I need to pass them to here when it could just grab them out of the program? And the answer is because I'm creating a method that I want to be robust. I want to be able to pull it out of this class and have it still work fine on its own. I don't want it to be like little baby chicks that are used to getting everything from the mommy all the time. So when you pull them out, they're like, "Mommy, mommy," and they starve to death, right? I want this to be able to work and survive on its own. So we're going to be able to so we're going to pass these three things even though it could get them from fields in the program. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add something. I'm going to add a totally new thing at the end of the class declaration. I'm going to say throws IO exception. And I'll explain what that means because this is actually going to become pretty important. So what's going to happen here is we're actually going to be reading a file. And you probably thought that a lot of things can go wrong before when you're writing a Greenfoot program, and the truth is you just got no idea. When you start reading a file, all kinds of things can go wrong. Usually in your Greenfoot program so far, when things go wrong, it's just because we screw up in our programming, which we all do. But that's not what I'm talking about. When you start reading a file, all kinds of other things can happen. For example, the file might not be there. The file might have the wrong name. It might be the wrong kind of file, not have the right kind of data. There's all kinds of things that can go wrong that have nothing to do with your program when you start reading from a file. This is, in a way, when I say throws IO exception means all of the different ways that things could get screwed up when you're reading a file. This is almost kind of warning the program that, yeah, I know there's going to be could potentially be some problems here when I read the file, and we're ready to handle them. So we always just have to put this in, and there's going to be other stuff we have to put in when we're reading a file. So what I'm going to do here now is first I'll just do my regular open and close curly brackets. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to need to make something I'm going to need to sort of set up a tool that's going to read this file. And the tool I'm going to set up, it comes from the java.io.star, the input output, and it's called a buffered reader. So the buffered reader so what the buffered reader is going to do is it's going to read the file one line at a time. And it's normally when we read a file, we might read one byte at a time or one character at a time. The buffered reader allows us to read the whole thing one line at a time. I'm just kind of setting it as a placeholder. You notice I assigned as null so far because it's going to be null until we know for sure that we can open the file and make it work. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a string array. It's a two-dimensional string array, so I have to do 2 pairs of curly brackets. This array is going to get passed back up, and it's going to get assigned past whatever goes into here is going to become the map array. It's going to become the map array string array. But it's already called, I already have that assigned up here. I could probably use the same name as what's in a field up here, but I don't want to confuse myself by assigning the same thing twice. So I'll call it M array. But just understand that when this is done, it's going to become the map array string array. So this is and it's going to be new string, and that's going to be the number of rows is going to be the map height, and the number of columns is going to be the map width. Again, you might have noticed here that the y, or the height, that means the y goes first and the x goes second. If you're used to math or computer graphics, that might seem weird to you, but when I'm making an array, it goes the other way around. It goes backwards like that. Now, we're going to start something new, which is called the try statement. So the try statement, we're going to read, it's time to start reading from a file. And as I've said before, and we'll say again, when you start reading from a file, all kinds of stuff can go wrong. So what we're going to do is we're kind of telling the program, okay, try to read from the file. I know things could get screwed up. And we tell it to try literally by using the try statement. So it's called a try block. There's two essential parts of a try block. First I do try, and I do open and close curly brackets, and then I do finally. Now later on I'm going to teach you there's something in between here that goes in a catch, which is catching an error, but we don't, that's not necessary yet. So when you do a try block and you use it, the most common use of a try block is when you're reading a file. You always have to do a try with an open and close curly bracket followed by a finally with an open and close curly brackets. This basically means try to do this, and then when you're done, be sure to always do this. So whatever's in the finally block will definitely happen. When you're reading a file, the important purpose of a finally block is to make sure your file gets closed. Just like when you go and open all your cabinets in the kitchen, before you leave the kitchen, you close them. It's the same idea. So let me show you how that's literally done. First of all, I'm going to take this buffered reader that I created up here, and I'm going to say equals new buffered reader, and then in parentheses I'm going to write new file reader, and inside file reader I'll write file name, which we had passed to us before. So so what we have here, buffered reader, that should say buffered reader, not just buffered read. So what this is, a file reader actually looks through and reads the file, but the file reader, what it does is it just reads one character at a time. So the file reader is going to read this guy, and then it'll read this guy, and then it'll read this guy, okay? But the buffered reader is going to make it a little easier. The buffered reader is going to take what the file reader does, and it's going to just take one line at a time. You may not know this, but when you read text in each character in text has a certain number. It's called an ASCII number that represents it. And so each one of these has its own separate number. And at the end of the line, before the beginning of the line, right, which is from here to here, there's a line break. That's what makes it go down to the next line. And the line break also has its own character, its own number to represent it, but we don't want it to go in our array. That's not necessary. And also it's even more confusing because it's one thing on a PC, another thing on a Mac, another thing in Linux maybe. I don't know what it is in Linux. So that makes it even more confusing. So to make things simpler, we have this buffered reader which just grabs this whole first line, and then it grabs the whole second line, and so on, which makes things a lot easier. Okay, so now we have our buffered reader, which is going to do all the reading part. I'm going to make a string called L, the letter L, to represent, that's not a number one. It looks like a number one. It's not. It's a letter L, so don't put a number one there. To represent the line that we're reading at a particular time. And then I need to know what map row we're on, so I'm going to create an integer variable called map row. So this just tells us what row we're on. And then I'm going to say while. I'm going to do a while block. A while block, it's just going to say while there's still lines left to read, keep reading it. So while L, our line, remember that's a letter L, not a number one, L equals br dot read line not equal null. So let me explain what that whole thing means. So br.readline. Readline is a method in the buffered reader which grabs, as I said, the whole line. This equals sign assigns it to the L variable. Okay, so the L variable is getting a new value each time I do the while loop runs, Now, when it's done, that L is going to become null. That means it's going to tell it to stop. But as long as there's still a line to keep reading, it's going to keep doing this. So, what's going to happen now? It's going to say the mArray variable. It's going to take the mArray string, and it's going to get whatever row we're on, which is the first time it's going to be 0, then it's going to be 1. And it's going to assign it, it's going to take the line that we just grabbed, which is the read line thing, and then it's going to split it up. So I'm going to use split, and I'm going to do double quotes in there. What this is going to do is split it up into each character. So what's actually going to happen here is it's going to split this up. This is actually going to become 1, not 0. That's because 0, which is the first element of the array, is actually going to be a null blank space, because that's how the split works. So this is going to become 1, this is going to become 2, right? So this will become 0, 1, 0, 2. I'm sorry, this will become 0, 1, 1, 1, or 1, yeah. So it's going to break this up into each separate. It's going to break each of these into a separate part of the array. So this is really the core. This is dividing it up into separate characters, each with its own number. And then what I need to do is I'm going to add 1 every turn. Every time I go around, I'm going to add 1 to our row, so I know that we're on the right thing. Then this is the main thing we need to do. This was the most important part. So now what I need to do, what the finally is used for usually when you're reading a file, the most important thing it's used for is to make sure that you close the file when you're done. If you don't, you can cause a lot of trouble. So I'm going to say if br not equal null, then I'm going to close it. So this means if it's open, close it. That's all that's saying. That's what the finally, that's right. For now, that's all the finally really needs to do. Okay, and now I've created my array here. My array is created. So I'm going to say return array. So this string is going to get passed up here. So now we have this thing. Let's call it. Okay, let's actually make this method happen. Okay. So I'm going to say we already created the map array string up here. Okay. So I'm going to say map array equals, and we're going to call the read map from text file method. And the things that we're passing it are, we need to pass the map width, we need to pass the map height, map height, and we need to pass the file name. And hopefully I didn't make any mistakes, because I'm going to compile it now and see if this gives me any problems. Oh, I did forget something. So, this is important. You notice down here I had to warn that we could get an I/O exception up here, but since the tile2 constructor is calling this read map from text file, that means it could also get an I/O exception. In other words, the I/O exception that comes out here. So anything that calls something that could throw an all I/O exception also has to have a throws I/O exception. So I have to put throws I/O exception on the read map from text file because it's reading a file, and because this is calling something that's reading a file, I have to put throws IO exception on there too. For some reason, I always forget that, but that's a good way for you to learn with me. And now it's working. So now, and if I look here, if I compile it, nothing's going to get drawn. But if you look here, if I inspect it, there should be a string map array. And if I look at it here, it's got 8 rows, and each row has 12 columns. And you'll notice here the first one's 0, but then we have private int hash 42. What is 42? Well, that's actually the name of the character, which is the asterisk, and that's the first one. The second one here is 32, which is a blank space because that's there's nothing there. So we actually have, you can't see the walls, but we actually have our array drawn. And that means we're actually pretty darn close. There's not much more to be done. Because now all we have to do is take that array and draw the wall from it. So what I need to do is I need to make a new method called public we're just going to call it draw wall map from text array. It's going to be a public method. I'm making these methods public because I might put them somewhere else, and then so they'll be ready to be called if I put them somewhere else outside of this class, which I would like to do later on. I'm going to say void as a return. It's not going to return anything. It's just going to draw the map. It's going to do draw wall map from text array. That's what I decided to call it, and I'm just going to paste it here because I already typed that somewhere else, and that's a lot of typing, an easy way to make a screw up. So that's the name of my method. Now it's going to need to know some things too. The things it's going to need to know. It's going to need to know the width of the wall, so it knows where to put to help it know where to put them, and the height of the wall. It's going to need to know what symbol represents a wall. Again, right now, all we're doing is putting in the walls. Later on, we're going to put in the cat and the cheese as well. But right now, we're just putting in the wall. So I'm going to put in, I need to know the string wall marker, and then I'm going to need the array to draw the map from. So I'm going to say string. Oops, that should have a space there. So this is my setup for my method. So what this is going to need to do, it's going to need to basically go through each. It's going to need to go through each one of these things. So now, because I did it right, it's not going through the text file anymore. But I've got a text file where each one of these is going to be, so this one's going to be 0, 1, this is going to be 1, 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, 1, okay, going all the way across. Actually, so it's got a number for each one of these, and it's going to go through each one of these things. So it's going to have to go through each row and look at each one of these separately and draw a wall wherever there's a star. That's what it's going to do right now. So we're going to first go through all the rows. To go through all the rows, first of all, let's create an X and a Y. To use for the loops. I could create these in the loops, but there's actually a reason I'm going to not want to do that later on. And now I'm going to have a for loop. So for y equals 0. Now we're going to go up to the length of so we need to go up to, in this case, 8, right? Because we're counting down. So there's 8 rows. So there's 8 rows. So that's the length of the first part of the map array, which is the number of rows. And I can get that by saying y is less than map array dot length. So the length here is the length of the map array is 8 because there's 8 rows down. And then I'll say y plus plus. That just means we're going to add one value to the y each turn, so we do each row. This is the general shape of a for loop, which we've used before. Okay. Now we're going to have another for loop inside the for loop, because for each one, right, we're gonna start on the first row, and then on the first row we need to go across each one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like that, going across. So I'm going to say for x equals 0, x is less than. Now we're not going to do maparray.length, we're going to do maparray y.length. So we're saying the length of each row. I spelled map wrong there. Map has one P. We're going to do the length of each row. So each one of these is going to be 13 because the rows are 13 across. And we'll do x plus plus to add 1 to x for each time. We're really very close. I know this is a long lesson, but it's not an easy one. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say if I'm going to look at that particular column, map array y, x, and again, notice just because of the way that an array is laid out, the y comes first, not the x. It's just something about how when arrays are laid out. And we're going to say equals, and this is a method of the string. This is a string we're looking at. We want to see if it's the same as another string. The other string that we're looking at is the wall marker, which we got here. The wall marker, if you look up here, is a star, right? Is equal to the wall marker, which is a star. So this is just saying if the particular character we're looking at is equal to the star, which is the wall marker, then what we want to do, we're going to say we're going to find the location of where the wall x and the wall y are going to go. So the x coordinate is going to be equal to the how far over it is. So say we're on number 3, it would be 3 over times the width of a wall. Because say we're the third wall over, then we want to be at 150 because that's 3 walls over. Each wall is 50. So x times wall width, that's why we needed to know the wall width, minus wall width divided by 2. So the wall width divided by 2, what that does is, because it places the wall according to by the center instead of by the edge, we need to scoot it over a little bit so that it places something on the edge instead of in the center. And then I'm going to say int wall y equals x y times wall height plus wall height divided by 2. Now you might be asking, how come this one's minus and this one's plus? The answer is because this one's starts one too far to the right, because as I told you before, the 0 here becomes a blank space over here. 0 is null. So this actually starts 1 to the right. So we're actually going to move it, shift it over to the left a little bit. This starts 1 to the left, so we're going to shift it over to the right a little bit. And then we're going to add the object, which in this case is just going to be a new wall, because all we're adding is walls. Later on things are going to get more complicated when in future lessons at wall x and wall y. And so we made a method. All we have to do is call it now. So I'm going to say So in this case, we're just going to call it. We're not even going to have to assign a variable to it or anything like that. So I'm just going to say draw wall map from text array. I'll just copy this up here and paste it because it's a lot of text. And I'm going to call this, and I have to pass in some variables, which I've already created here, which are wall width, wall height, wall marker, and the map array variable. So it's going to draw this, it's going to pass this thing to it, and it's going to run. It's going to pass the map and pass all this stuff, and hopefully it will work. And look, there's my walls. If you look, you'll see it draws all my walls. And if you want to see it, the change, for example, if I want to add something new that wasn't in there before, I could add a new I'll add a new asterisk, and I'll save it. And if you notice, I'll compile it. Oops. Sorry, compile it, and there's the new wall. And I can take it out, and I can compile it again. Oops, forgot to save it. And the wall goes away. So, I know that's a long lesson. It'll get a little easier. Next, what we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to catch some common errors that can happen with this, not in your programming, but in the outside world. And then I'm going to show you how to add the cat and the cheese as well. And the mouse. I guess we have to add the mouse somewhere. All right, I'll see you soon. Bye.